Hello, this is Douglas from Curing Broke, and this is the second episode of our podcast since we're listening together. The origin story of Field Future, the coaching program that I have that helps creatives break through any self sabotage or limiting beliefs that's holding them back from getting to the world that they want to create. And the thing about being able to get past any creative blocks, especially if you're a creative in transition. If you didn't listen to the first episode of the podcast of me giving you my origin story, episode 1, please listen to it, because for a lot of creatives, when they get started, they're, especially when they want to use their creativity to create income for themselves, there are certain challenges that get in their way, or their realization that happens. One, sometimes you're just tired of working for other people and they're using your creativity to profit, especially when you're just making magic happen left and right, because there's only so much magic that you have, especially when people can look at you like a golden goose, but not knowing where that creativity comes from. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. We all live this life of that leads us to the point of creativity. For some people, they had a wonderful life of growing up, but there's some of us that have this darkness that inspires our creativity, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's not like we're dark people, but there's just energy. There's this weight that comes with it. Some people will say introverted or extroverted, but when we put ourselves out there, for some of us, there it's a light that burns very quick and it needs to recharge. And so if you're going to create a business around it, right, how do you put yourself out there? Or should I say, when you're going to leave something that you're the creative entity of, what does that process look like if you're going to make a transition into that? And that's what I help people with, because there are three problem areas that I know that creatives have when they're going to make that transition. And this is what I built my coaching program around: being able to solve these problems when you're ready to make that jump and believe in yourself fully. So the first one is a negative view of yourself and having negative self-talk. There are a lot of times where a creative will push themselves so hard because there's this inner monologue that's going on in their head. I'm sure if you can crack that egg open and see that little picture that's in there, it's probably a parent or a sibling or a school or a teacher or something that might have told you that you're not enough. And from that not being enough, you're ready to prove them all wrong. And that is very motivating to a point. That's that trial by fire that I talked about in the other episode, where you're just so full of energy to prove things wrong, and that could get you only so far. If you're working for somebody else and there's systems around you, sure, you could be the light, the fire of the engine, if you will. But if you're going to start something of your own, you're going to have to let that go completely, because when you do, you're able to bring in the opportunity of growth, of being able to let go of some of the things. You don't have to focus on just being the creative part of your business. You can be the actual leader of your business. And that leads to the point of finding that inner leadership. But before I go into that, negative self-talk, the stories that we tell ourselves, the things that we say to ourselves that stop us, or that sometimes motivate us to push a little bit harder, it's not always the healthiest. And being able to have that holistic inner monologue that happens, there's ways of solving that. And one is developing the inner leadership. What type of leader would you want? If What type of leader would you want to work for? And if you don't sound like that type of leader to yourself, think about it. Then it's time to make some changes, right? Unless you like being yelled at. Some people do, but you don't have to, right, to have a good outcome. So making that shift in your leadership. And there's two ways to really doing that. One is being able to actualize the inner you that's powerful. And the way to do that is having a clear vision of that person, to be able to visualize who you are. I recently, time flies, almost a year ago, I put a free course on Udemy called MVP that combines meditation, visualization, and prayer in a 10-day challenge form that allows you to be able to visualize towards your goal so that you can start creating change on a conditioning level of things that you do, so that you can create new structures in your life, so you can have different behaviors and get different results. I call this the fact method. So being the way you frame things will change the way that you act, and then the actions that you take. And then it creates a congruency in your life, which allows you to create a transformation fact, right? Find your fact, frame the way that you see things, the actions that you take, making sure there's congruency there to where your subconscious and conscious, who you are and who you are on the inside, can really vibe with that, which will then allow you to have transformation. That's the process of all my coaching or any program that I create. The frame, the action you take, the congruency, transformation. Simple process, right? Then I build tactics around that. Anyway, MVP follows that. Meditating, visualization, and prayer. You could check out that course on Udemy, or I'll put a link into it, the Facebook group that's connected to this podcast. If you just type in, if you look at the show notes, there'll be a link for the podcast or the Facebook group there. But being able to actualize a powerful you is being able to connect the way you visualize and see yourself. And the second thing is constantly being accountable for that. So the main thing that you should have as a creative is a journal. A journal will allow you to, it'll be your compass to constantly move you forward. It'll be your North Star to make sure when you're walking through the night that you don't end up walking in a circle, but you're walking towards the same direction in the darkness of night. That's what your journal is. And being able to have it so tied into the future version of you. And I go through a couple of processes of that using symbols. Symbols are the best way to talk to your subconscious, not just words, and all those things that allow you to, again, obsess with becoming that better version of you in a very healthy way that allows immediate change in your life. Because when you have immediate change, it allows you to move forward. And that's what you're looking for, to be able to move forward now, right? So that creates the inner leadership of being able to visualize and then also journal. And that also will eliminate negative self-talk, because you are holding yourself accountable and you're changing the words that you use to yourself on a daily basis. Second thing is there are certain behaviors and patterns that 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 creatives have that don't allow them to connect to their actual purpose, because you can't have a vision if you don't have a mission. What is your purpose? There's sometimes where people are stuck in the role of being an employee, that they're so used to adopting other people's idea that even though they know that they're creative, they don't know what to do if they were to let go of things that don't serve them anymore. And again, I talked about that in the first podcast. If you haven't listened to it, we have our trial by water, our trial by fire, and trial by air. And your trial by water is being able to just swim away from the things that don't serve you. Granted, you could still see the shoreline in the back, but you just try to swim further and further and further away from it. And then eventually you got to have your trial by fire, burn everything. There is no going back. And that's going to require a lot of pain. But from that pain, it's going to be, of course, transformation. And that transformation is trial by air, being allowed to believe that you can fly and be free. That's a 3-step process. I know visually, or you can see that in your mind, but it makes sense, right? And that is being able to connect to your mission. And so the one thing that we all have, and it's the way that we're able to connect to our mission, is knowing what our values are. So as people, we have this thing called maps of reality. There's ways of how we see how the world should be. Now, there's this phrase in NLP. NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. It was designed in the late 70s, and it connected, it's the way of you being able to use language to be able to program your mind. It's you can read more about it, and I'll do a podcast on it. But it was created by this guy named Richard Bandler that was modeling therapist and saw the language that they were using in order to create change in people. And was able to, as he called it, model excellence, to be able to pull the best parts of what they did in order to create change in people. From there, he started to model different hypnotists and be able to see what they did. This guy named Milton Erickson, to where he was able to use language, to use conversational hypnosis to create change in people. A lot of other people move this in the forefront, and I'll get back on track. But what I'm trying to help you see right now in your mind is that the language that you use can control the future that you want. And being able to use that language to unearth what your values are, because your values are who you are as a person. And if you connect your values to your actual goals, then then you're resistance free. So earlier I talked about fact, right? Your frame, the actions that you take, congruency. This is making sure that you are congruent with what you want to do in order to have transformation. So your values are pretty much the headlights to the road that you're going down in that darkness, to use that metaphor I talked about before. So your map that you have is not reality. If you think about it, if you look at a map, it's not really the territory, it's a representation of it. They use this reference point in NLP, and it makes a lot of sense. And if it doesn't make sense, it will make sense right after this. So if you think about it, if you're going on down a road, you're in your car, you're going to need a map to get to a destination. That destination, we'll call that your goal. Now, the map that you have it's a drawing, it's a representation of it, but it's not the actual road. It's not each rock. It isn't each plant on the road. It isn't the pavement. It isn't the headlights, or it isn't the street lights, right? And so being able to use your map, the clearer that it is, the easier you are to get to your destination. So if you think about it, if you're in your car, your map is your reality of how to get to where you want to go. Your values are the headlights of that car. They shine the brightest. Those are the things that you want to follow, your headlights, to get you to where you want to go. A lot of times people are driving with their headlights off. You got a map, but they don't have the headlights on. They don't know what their values are. So for me, I was able to find out my values are being decisive, being curious, and being playful. Those are the things that allow me to be, I guess another value would be happy, but it's another topic. Following those values allow me, when I attach those to my goal, I can move in full congruency towards them. And once you know what your mission is, mine is to help creatives in order for them to have their light shine the brightest so they can create impact in the world. Knowing that's my mission, the way that I'm able to get there is, one, being decisive to know that I'm the only person that can help them. Two, that I'm curious to know who they are. Three, I'm playful. Having things feel very light, because when you do, you just have a lot of energy. And if I look back in my life, I'm the happiest when I'm those three things, and I can feel it now when I think about it. Those are the things that motivate me, and I have memories of that, and I can see myself in the future doing that, and I know that's who I am presently. So that's being able to connect to your mission And the other thing, and I just mentioned too, is called quantum shifting. So being able to look through time and take those values that you have and kind of transpose them all through time. A lot of times when creatives are just getting started off, they 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 have all these moments in time where they are living someone else's life. And when that happens, you start second guessing yourself. You start seeing the world through a perception that is not your own. And it goes back to that inner leadership where I talked about negative self talk and all these other beliefs that you're carrying, that you're holding. And it's because the values that you're focused on aren't your own. And being able to quantum shift, and again, quantum shift meaning being able to see that you are in control of time, that your past doesn't exist, it's already happened. So being able to take the best parts of it and use that as a foundation, especially when you are going back in time, if you will, to focus on the values that are true to you. Then seeing yourself in the present as being that person. Then projecting yourself so far in the future that you have these anchors in the future that allow you to have a magnet that is pulling you towards that future. Again, there's a reason why my program is called Fueled Future, because you're being fueled by your future. That's what's it's and if you think about it, if you're being fueled by your future, it's unlimited abundance. A lot of people will talk about manifestation and wishing for things to happen. And I'll do another podcast on manifestation. But if you're stuck in a place of wanting and desire, it's suffering. It just is. But if you can live your future as if it's already happened, then you're in a place of knowing. And that place of knowing is solid. You're not in this place of, again, desire or neediness. It's happened. And that will allow you to be free. Anyway, that's quantum shifting. I could go on that. I should probably just do a podcast on that. The next thing is being able to be free of reacting to criticism, to not feel like you have to constantly defend your boundaries. There's just sensitivity that comes with creativity. It's because you don't believe fully in yourself. And because you don't believe fully in yourself, it might be hard to express who you are and what you do. But two, it's so fragile that the thought of criticism won't allow you to move forward. And the thing is, if you are in that place of transition and you want to use your creativity to either create a business or create an impact or create a movement, whatever it is, you're going to have courage to connect. Right. And so that's what I call in my program borderless boundaries. If you think about it, it's kind of, what is a borderless boundary? And that's the thing. It's to be fluid. It's to be able to protect yourself, but to also accept everything, to allow things to flow through you and past you, but not change you, right? You're almost a membrane, if you will. You're still a membrane, but a solid, firm, indestructible membrane. You can't be destroyed because you are who you are. And there's a couple of ways that I go through that. I kind of just shared it with the courage to connect. The other one is invisible positioning, being able to have a conversation, to put yourself out there and have a strong ground. When you communicate, there's three ways you could communicate. Either you're superior, you're friendly, or you're inferior. If you know the way that you're communicating with people and you're clear on it and you can fluctuate between them and use them in a tactical certain way, you can then get people to believe in your movement, whatever it may be, whether it be believing in your business or your message that you're putting out there. And so there are four levels of influence when you think about it. It's being able to influence yourself, being able to influence someone one-on-one, being able to influence the masses. And then the fourth one is being omnipresent. The message that you put out there lives without you needing to say a word. And ultimately, as a creative, right, that's what we're looking to have that global and also temporal. When I say temporal, there is our impact lasts throughout time, and we connect to things that are timeless, right? And if you're able to do that, that's where you create that invisible positioning. Go through that, of course, in the Field Future program, but it's one of my favorite parts. And then the last one is the courage to connect. Being able to put yourself out there, to knowing how to communicate, and having frameworks of communication that allows you to be clear, to be confident, and to be congruent with who you are on the inside. And of course, that brings it back to full circle of having that inner leadership, being able to transition to your mission, and then being able to have borderless boundaries. Those three things will allow you to have a fueled future. And that's my program. I thought it would take me an hour or so to go through it all, and I guess I could, but I want to have this in about 20 minutes or so. So that's the origin story of my coaching program. If that's something that you're interested in, just go to www.curingbroke.com, and I go through a video of walking you through the process. You just have to put in your name and email. And if it's something that you want to talk about, click the link to set a calendar time to talk with me. And I look forward to speaking to you. It'll be me on the phone as of the recording of this podcast. Before I bring any other coaches in to talk, I would love to connect with you. You don't, and of course, I would want you to join the program. But at the same time, I would love to hear where you're at and where you want to go, and see if what I can do can help you. And if so, that'd be amazing. If not, then it was great to connect with you. So see yourself going through that process, going to www.curingbroke.com and going through that video, and then a booking call and talking to me in person. So until next time, again, I got to work on that sign off. This is Douglas Befford from Curing Broke. Thank you for listening to the podcast, and I look forward to speaking to you soon in the future. All right, until next time.